Commissioner, you may now begin.
Good afternoon. I'm Roy Priest, the chair of the HOC Commission. I would like to welcome you to our November the 3rd monthly meeting for the month of November. And I'd like to first start by introducing the other commissioners who are also present with me at the meeting today. Our Vice Chair, Fran Kelleher, Chair Pro Tem, Rick Nelson, Commissioner Pamela Bird, Commissioner Jackie Simon, and I think that's here. Linda has not joined us yet. And Mr. Merkowitz will be with us later. And I'd also like to welcome Kayleen Brown, who's our acting executive director, and members of the HOC staff. So with that, we have been advised that no one has in fact signed up for the community forum portion of our agenda. So I will then advance our discussion to a report from Mrs. Kayleen Brown, our acting executive director.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. For the record, I'm Kayleen Brown. I'm acting executive director for HOC, and I'm pleased to provide you with November 3rd's executive director report on activities at HOC. Before I get into the actual report, which of course it's in your published material, I'd like to mention that HOC staff, mainly of the property management, resident services, and maintenance divisions, have been continuing vaccination efforts to provide booster shots to those who are eligible. And so far, through today, we've offered 193 booster shots at 3 properties: Arcola Towers, Oaks at Four Corners, and Washington Square. And so that effort continues. With respect to our rental assistance efforts to obtain the maximum funding available to HOC, staff is continuing its work to evaluate the data from our residents who may be eligible and to ensure that as many as possible submit applications. So that work continues and will do so until there are no more funds available. Turning now to the Resident Services Division, and many of you know that the Resident Services Division is really core to our keeping people housed and also helping them to achieve their fullest potential. And so with that, I wanted to highlight a few of the efforts of the HSC Academy, which is embedded in the Resident Services Division. The staff has been working to really ensure that young adults, students, and seniors are offered the best opportunities to ensure that they remain housed through referrals and a number of other initiatives, as well as to help them reach self-sufficiency. So in this past month of October, HSC Academy was awarded a $20,000 grant from HSC's nonprofit affiliate, Housing Opportunities Community Partners, and that will provide 40 customers with tuition assistance to improve their personal selves. Since 2015, HSC Academy has been providing tuition assistance, and historically, the program has provided assistance to approximately 50 adults each year. As part of the HSC Academy's academic programming and planning, during October, the staff focused heavily on recruiting new participants. There are currently 6 high school seniors enrolled, and in the program that's partnered with First Generation College Bound to serve these students. First Generation College Bound is a community-based organization which offers youth and their families a pipeline of educational interventions, including academic readiness, supportive services, and guidance to achieve high school graduation and college admissions. The goal is to enroll 20 high school seniors and juniors and to continue to work with them to achieve their college success. Also, through HSC Academy, the staff referred 5 customers to Career Catchers, which is a employment search firm for workforce development and training. The Academy also allowed through Career Catchers participation by 4 residents in Microsoft Outlook training to improve their skills as they work toward betterment in the workforce. GED preparation information session was also hosted, and 9 families participated. There's also a small business strategy course, which hosted first 3 weeks of cohort number 5 and 6 with a total enrollment of 10 customers. HOC Academy also hosted its tuition assistance program briefings for new participants. And so those were the highlights essentially for the HSC Academy, but as I said, Resident Services continues its efforts to ensure the proper supports are provided to the participants in our program and those who wish to become participants in our programs. It continues its efforts with one-on-one financial literacy coaching, as well as a financial literacy workshop. With regard to supportive housing, the resident services staff provide services to about 230 participants. And through those efforts, they're essentially focused, this program is essentially focused on formerly homeless and folks with disabilities. And their goal is to provide a variety of services as are needed. One note here is that there are a few participants who no longer need this in-depth support, and so they have been referred for participants or for access to the emergency voucher program. Resident services staff also continues its work with Fatherhood Initiative. As you all have been told before and know, the program is really focused on parenting, education, case management services, and financial assistance to enable or to help fathers become better fathers and better family men. October starts the first month of the new year, and so far 47 fathers have been enrolled with a goal of a total of 356 participants over a 2-year program. And as usual, the resident services staff continue to provide resources to all of our residents. So that 470 customers were provided food resources, stretching exercises, and such are provided or were offered to residents of the Oaks at Four Corners. And seniors continue to participate in arts program for the aging. And the program continues to collaborate with Montgomery County's Primary Care Coalition and Catholic Charities Dental Clinic, as we reported to you in the last month. The Service Coordination Unit continues its work with focus this month on preparing residents to access services as we move into the holiday season. And so they continue to offer referrals to particular services as they're needed, housing stabilization and such. And they also perform wellness checks or continue to perform wellness checks to ensure that our residents, in particular seniors, are engaged, and also that they are the resources that they need to ensure their safety and well-being are also available to them, in addition to normal food distribution and such. So that's a mouthful for resident services. As I said, that group is extremely busy and extremely focused on ensuring that our residents not only have the services at their disposal, but that they're referred to assistance as they need to be to ensure that they remain housed. Switching now to the real estate division, in addition to the many projects that are either under construction or in rehab, and there are about 685 units of those, the staff continues its planning and work toward development initiatives. So that on October 19th, staff with myself and Chair Priest met with the county executive, and participants in that meeting included Pastor Warner and Ms. Carolyn Taylor from the historic Emery Grove community. And the purpose of the meeting was to discuss the proposed Heritage Emery Grove development, which it's really important to the commission. We've had discussions with you and there's strong support for it. But because of the ownership of the land that would eventually become the Heritage Emery Grove redevelopment, the county executive support is needed to ensure that aggregation of land is available for the outcome that we would like in Emery Grove. And I'm pleased to report that the county executive was highly supportive and responded favorably and directed its county staff to begin the work so that any land that needs to be contributed, any support that the county needs to give to this initiative, that it's activated right away so we can move forward with erasing the damage done by in prior years by urban renewal. So we're pleased to report on that. On the mortgage finance side, staff is working diligently to issue the bonds and to close on the transaction to finance the three Willow Manor properties, Shady Grove and Georgian Court. So there's really not much to report there this month. However, in one piece of really good and exciting news, FHA and the Federal Finance Bank have relaunched the federal financing program in collaboration with FHA so that we're able to finance risk share mortgages with FHA for projects that are not new construction projects, but on refinances or ongoing preservation. So why is this important? It is important because one, the FFB financing program does not require the issuance of bonds, and therefore the demand on volume cap goes away. It is a taxable financing vehicle, and in the last go around, there were about 15 housing finance agencies which participated in the program, and the top 5 were in the Northeast region. But more importantly, HOC ranked number 4 in the usage of this program, in that we've funded $334 million at very, very lucrative interest rates, and that's why it's important to us. We've identified at the moment approximately 8 transactions that could participate in the program. So one key difference here, the last time around, there was a 3-year window within which we had to complete the transactions. This time around, there's a little bit more time for initial approval by FHA and by the date by which the transaction will need to close. Well, what's important here, more important than anything else, there is no limit on the amount of financing we can do under this program. So as many transactions as we can find, either for refinance or to lower borrowing costs, and assuming that the transactions will allow, we're able to access this resource within the time frame that they've set out. So again, we've preliminarily looked at about 8 transactions, and as opportunities come up, we'll certainly evaluate them. In the Housing Resources Division, the Family Self-Sufficiency Program continues its work to recruit and inform would-be participants in the program, and there are no real major, though there are no issues to report there. We just continue to work to maximize participation in that program. As far as the emergency housing voucher initiative is concerned, we're pleased to report that we've increased the number of referrals from HHS, and we're now up to 82 referrals, and I'm sure that number has grown since the report was written. 51 families have been determined eligible, and we'll just continue to push until we fully utilize the 118 vouchers.
Great.
Turning now to our traditional housing choice voucher program, as we've reported before, we have been working really, really hard to get our utilization up from 92% to 95%. As of the writing of this report, we were at a little over 92%, and since then, with the number of approvals that have come in, we're now at 93%. And in discussion with the Director of Housing Resources today, we're about 143 units away from achieving our 95% utilization. That said, we've ramped up our call-ups, and so we're pushing hard and providing all the necessary tools to the division to ensure that we maximize the utilization to the levels that we need to get to. So that's some good news there, and we are quite confident that we're going to achieve that. For the maintenance division, and I've not provided a report on activities in the maintenance division in the last couple of months, but the staff continues to ensure that maintenance is done on our units, and that our residents are being taken care of despite the pandemic. And so the staff has been making good progress, we believe, in reducing the existing backlog, and in particular addressing emergency work orders. In October, there were 1,816 work orders, of which 132 were emergencies. And year to date, the team has completed 6,900 total work orders, of which 560 were emergencies. And that's pretty significant given the conditions under which the staff has to work. This month, we've started to convert our HVAC systems over to heating, and that's going well. There have been no real issues there, and we continue to do our preventative maintenance work on all of our units, changing out filters, replacing coils, and cleaning coils and such. And so, in addition to just normal maintenance of our properties, the maintenance division is hard at work preparing for HUD REAC inspections. And that's pretty significant. While we expect that inspections are ongoing and issues are being addressed, sometimes tenants don't necessarily report what's happening in their units. And so part of this preparation for REAC inspections is to double down and ensure that we're touching things that could yield a negative score on our REAC inspections. The maintenance division has also begun discussion with a contractor to upgrade several of our stormwater management systems from dry pond to submerged gravel wetlands. And the important thing to note here, this effort is part of the initiative to widen Interstate 270. And because of that, we're not expecting any cost to HOC, because they would do the work and continue the maintenance of it. And so the maintenance director is working through that moment. When we have something concrete to report, we'll certainly provide that to you. And finally, the maintenance division is working with several vendors to provide tailored online training modules for our trades maintenance workers. And this is really with the goal of increasing efficiency and advancing the skills of our trade maintenance workers. And so we're always looking for ways to not just improve our processes, but our personnel as well, because in improving our personnel, we're able to improve our processes. So that is a mouthful, but this is where we are, and this is the report, the end of the report for November 3rd. Are there any questions?
I would like to, Kayleen, really acknowledge on behalf of all the commissioners the increased subject diversity of your report. This covers a large portion of the operation of HOC, and we appreciate the information that you provided in this report, and we certainly, I think we would certainly underscore that is a level. Once you do something right, you expect it to continue to repeat it. So just make that point to you, and thank you for, again, the subject diversity of the report. Other commissioners?
And if I may, just for the record, the division staff, the various staff of the many divisions of HSC, they're taking this seriously, and they want to ensure that the commission has the best information possible. And so, their work and Christina's work in assembling this information makes it look easier. But I appreciate the opportunity to share with the commission what we've been up to.
Yeah, I would make one other note in terms of your report about Emory Grove. The thing I thought was really important about that was the fact that Reverend Warner was the facilitator of that meeting. I mean, he took charge and requested the meeting and then orchestrated all the players. And I thought the presentation that was done by our staff as part of that was excellent. So thank you for that.
Right.
And we should
It's
find a way to
wonderful
present it to the
wonderful
entire
to-
commission.
Sorry. It's wonderful to see that kind of communication going on and the cooperation and coordination. And I'm delighted that we have the executives' enthusiasm. I think that's very helpful. And clearly mistakes were made many years ago in most of the nation, across the nation, in urban renewal. It was the only tools that were available at the time, and that's what was used. But we're getting an opportunity to correct some of the bigger errors. And I am delighted to see again that many of the programs that we have for our residents, where we can, we are making those resources available and the information available to our applicants. And while they may be on our waiting list and we can't serve them at the moment, providing these additional resources to them does have the potential of increasing their disposable income and making it easier for them to pay the rent where they are. And I think that's a very important function that I'm sure the general public isn't aware that we're trying to do, but it's, we've got a large waiting list, and as fast as we are building and improving, the waiting list is longer. And so this is a help to those families, and I hope that they reach out and take advantage and participate in them, and that we extend them as broadly as we can.
I just like to comment on your comment about urban renewal. Having gone back in history, I started my involvement in housing community development in the urban renewal division. So I need to just acknowledge that while there were a number of things that were promised and not done, and some things done maybe in the wrong neighborhood, there was a lot of good that the urban renewal program did.
Absolutely.
So I don't want to leave the folks who were looking at this with the impression that there was no value to the program, because it did help, and it helped Montgomery County. But there were a number of things that occurred or that should have occurred that didn't. And Emory Grove being a prime example where folks were promised the opportunity to move back into their neighborhoods, and because of a whole host of things, that never happened. So I think very belatedly, at least, some of the descendants of those original residents will be able to move back because of this effort that we're undertaking with the church and now with the county. And I'm really pleased that the county is stepping up to the plate and joining with us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, commissioners, for your comments. If there are no other questions for Kay Brown, I would move the agenda to the commissioner exchange. And I would start that portion of the agenda by, I think today or one day this week, there was a notice that came out from NARO about commissioner training that was available. And they do have an excellent commissioner training curriculum. And so any of you all who take a look at that and may be interested, please advise so we can get you enrolled in the class if you're interested. So I just wanted to share that with you in case you may have missed that. Any other items for commissioner exchange? Seeing none, I will now move to the approval of our minutes. The agenda is for approval of minutes of October the 6th, 2021, approval of the minutes of a closed session for October the 6th, 2021, approval of the minutes for a special session that was held on October the 25th, and also approval of minutes of a closed special meeting that was held on October 25th. Can I get a motion to approve those minutes?
So
Commissioner
moved.
Byrd, I move approval.
Second.
It has been properly moved and seconded to approve stated minutes. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposers, nay. It's approved unanimously.
And
no-
Mr. Chair,
excuse me, Mr. Chairman, but since I was absent on the October 6th meeting, I need to be recorded as abstaining on the vote related to those two sets of minutes.
So noted. So noted that in the minutes.
Mr. Chair,
yes.
before we go on, I noticed that our auditor has joined us, and that report is at the end of the meeting. And since, is there any reason we can't move the audit report up earlier in the agenda to accommodate the auditor who is out of town?
Yes, we can do that. Is that,
I assume, Mandy, that's okay with you. I saw her name on the,
Yes, that's fine for us.
okay.
what I would do is that if the commissioners will accept the amendment of the agenda for the meeting by acclamation, we can proceed in that way. Do I get that acclamation from the commissioners to proceed to allow the report on the audit to occur at this segment of the agenda?
I
Yeah.
approve.
Yes.
Yes,
Agreed.
So ordered. So let me welcome our auditor to the meeting. And I assume that maybe Cornelia, you want to say something to introduce this segment of the agenda.
Sure. So thank you, Commissioner Priest. Thank you, Commissioner Nelson. Our audit team is here today to just give you a high-level overview of some of the financial information of the agency from this year and to entertain any questions that you may have on the reports. And the reports were sent out probably about an hour ago, the signed copies of all the reports to the commissioners. So again, I'll introduce Mandy Merchant. If you want to please start, go ahead.
Sure.
Okay. And sorry, Mandy, AJ, if you could pull up the presentation.
Thank you. Oh,
Thank
perfect. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. Commissioner Nelson, I appreciate that. Karen and I were happy to hang on and listen to everything going on at the agency, but we appreciate the opportunity to go first. So good afternoon, everyone. I am Mandy Merchant from Clifton Larson Allen, our CLA. I am joined with Karen Greiner, who is a director at CLA also. Her and I are going to present to you the results of the 2021 audited financial statements. So you would have received a copy of the ACFR, or the audited financial statements. You also should have a PDF of the single audit report, and also the management letter and the report on communication with those charged with governance. So today we're just going to go over a couple things. We're going to go over the audited financial statements, since we did meet last week with the audit committee and went through everything in detail with them. But please, if you have any questions, please let us know. So if you can go to the next page, please. Okay, so just a quick run through of our agenda for today. Obviously, we're going to go through the scope of the audit. We're going to talk about the financial statements and the single audit summary results for this year. We're going to talk about the summary of scheduled prior year findings, and then we'll wrap up with any kind of questions that anyone might have this year. So next slide. So just so everyone's aware, the audit that you have in front of you and the single audit report has 3 reports that we have issued as part of as CLA. So the first one is the independent auditor's report, which is the audit opinion on the financial statement. So that is in the larger document, the larger PDF on the ACFR. So that basically, kind of goes through based on our procedures from a risk-based approach and, ensuring that there's a fair presentation of your financial statements. I'm happy to report that we had an unmodified opinion this year, which is what you want. So that is a good thing. There's also 2 more reports, the report on internal controls over financial reporting and on compliance and other matters, and also the report on compliance for each major federal program, report on internal controls over compliance. Both of those are in the single audit report. And also with those two, we also have an unmodified opinion, and we will talk about the two of them in a little bit more depth when we go back a couple more slides. So all in all, the audit opinions, as I like to say, are clean opinions for the board. So now I'm going to turn it over to Karen. Karen is going to go into the high level of the financial statements just to kind of discuss the changes from year to year that occurred for the commission. Karen?
Yes, thank you. If you can go forward to the next slide, please. So we'll start with the statements of net position and discuss some of the significant changes that happened during the year. Cash and investments had an increase of about $138.9 million. The majority of this actually reflects $104 million in undrawn mortgage proceeds payable. And what we discussed with the BF&A committee last week was you've issued the bonds related to Westside, Shady Grove, and Stewart Town, and you got the proceeds. You've entered mortgage loan agreements with those borrowers, but they're drawdown loans, so you are holding the cash as restricted cash until the borrowers need the money for construction purposes. So you see a big increase in the cash that's restricted, but you also see a big increase in current liabilities, which we'll get down to a little bit later. The mortgage loans receivable, this went up about $129 million. And again, this is related to the Westside, Shady Grove, and Stewart Town property transactions, as well as Bower Park. Capital assets had an increase of about $56.5 million. The majority of this is due to the Bradley Crossing acquisition. You also had some development costs and pre-development costs for the Fenwick and Second new headquarters, as well as Brook Park renovation costs and cider mill improvements. And all of these additions were offset by transfers of the 11250 Veers Mill Road property and Westside Shady Grove. Those went out to discrete component units. And you also disposed of Stewart Town and Holly Hall. The current liabilities, we see this had an increase of $156 million. Again, the $104 million of this relates to the undrawn mortgage proceeds that you've got that are sitting as cash. That's a net effective zero. You also had a increase in the current loan of Westwood Towers. That is $20.4 million, and that was non-current in the past, but this year it has become a current liability. You also had an increase in current bonds payable of almost $30 million, and that's related to the normal payments on the older bonds as well as the newer bonds that were issued this year. Non-current bonds payable increased by the $97.1 million, and this was due to both single family and multifamily bond issuances during the year. And then the non-current other liabilities had an increase of about $61.7 million related to loans payable, and also $15 million increase in the pension liability. The pension liability, that's the number that's based on the actuarial report that's procured by the county government. So that's just a number that you're given, and you don't really have any control over what that number is every year. Any questions on this slide? Nope. Okay, next slide, please. Moving on to the statements of revenues and expenses and changes in net position. Your rental income increased slightly by about $2.1 million, and this was due to more units coming online this year for Cider Mill Apartments, Elizabeth House Rad, Willows of Gaithersburg, and Bradley Crossing. Your other income then, as you see, had a decrease of about $14.4 million, and the majority of that was due to unrealized gains, or this year losses, on your investments. So last year, you may have had, like, I think it was a $6 or $7 million gain on investments, and this year it totally flipped to an unrealized loss. But those, again, that's just unrealized because these are investments that are still being held through to maturity. Your housing assistance expenses, that increased about $7.5 million. This was due to an increase in voucher utilization and also a decrease in the tenant share of the rent due to COVID-19. Anytime the tenant rent decreases, of course, the commission then is on the hook to pick up more of the HAP payment that goes to the landlord. And your administrative expenses decreased by about 5.9 million. Half of this, about 3 million, was related to the pension and OPEB expense. And again, that's based on the actuarial report. And then you also had a decrease last year in temporary agency services and cost of issuance expenses. Non-operating revenues had an increase of 12.2 million, and this was primarily the gain on the sales of Stewart Town and Holly Hall. Any questions on this? Yes.
Yeah, Karen, would you, on the other income, would you just clarify for commissioners and others in case they are not aware that even though they might show a loss, this is not anticipated to be a loss when the transactions are held to full maturity?
Correct.
Okay.
That's
More of an accounting kind of thing.
It's an accounting concept, and it's based on just the market trends
Right.
In the current year.
Okay.
Yes. Moving on to the next slide, please. We just wanted to bring to your attention some of the COVID-19 pandemic responses that the HC has undertaken. In terms of the CARES funding that you received for the normal Section 8 voucher program, you actually received 4.6 million and spent that amount, but you also received an additional 2.9 million in cash, but that is unspent. That is also recorded as restricted cash, and that's due to be spent in full by December 31st of this year. For the mainstream vouchers, you spent and received just over $10,000, and you received $147,000, which is currently unspent, at least as of June 30, 2021. And that's
Can you
also
explain,
Mhm.
could you explain mainstream vouchers or identify them for those who aren't familiar?
so that's one of the subcategories of a housing choice voucher program. So you've got a separate category as it is of vouchers that are designated for specific categories of clients. So that mainstream one, I think that's mainstream 5 program, I think. But so there's different subcategories of the vouchers that you are funded. So in terms of the CARES funding, it was broken out between the regular housing vouchers, and if you have mainstream vouchers, you got separate awards for those, separate funding sources, basically.
But can you identify the populations that are included in mainstream vouchers, CARES?
Yes, within the Yardi system, the tenant, they are identified by whether they're in the regular voucher program or the mainstream voucher program.
I think, Jackie, you're asking beyond the accounting
Yes.
piece. Maybe
Right,
you want to provide that help.
This is Lynn Hayes. Good afternoon, commissioners. So the mainstream disabled vouchers are for non-elderly disabled households.
Yes, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Lynn.
We want to get those spent.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. So moving on to the next slide now, we're going to talk about your single audit report for this year. So there was no financial statements noted, as Mandy discussed earlier. This year's program that was tested was the Housing Finance Agency Risk Share Program. I know in the past we have typically seen the Housing Choice Voucher Program being tested, and we'll kind of explain that a little bit on the next slide. But for this year, it was the risk sharing program, and we had no single audit findings this year. So if we move on to the next slide. So the reason we did not test the voucher program this year is the use of the commission for the risk share program has gotten to be about $340 million. And that's actually now surpassed the housing voucher program as the largest program that you receive as a federal expenditure. So when we are selecting the programs for testing, there's a rotation that we have to follow that's set out for us in the uniform guidance. And then we also have to look at the dollar amount. So the voucher program, because that's been tested last year and there was no material weaknesses, it was not required to be tested this year for rotation purposes. We did, however, perform testing related to the 2 findings that were noted last year. And again, that's a requirement of uniform guidance. So last year, we had looked at 40 tenant files for eligibility, and 1 recertification packet was not located. So this year, we selected a sample of eligibility tenants again for the voucher program and did the same testing, looking for the eligibility packets, making sure income was properly recorded and verified, and making sure that the other documents were there. And there was no issues identified this year. And then for the second one last year, it was related to annual HQS inspection testings. And we had noted 4 issues. So this year we did a separate sample of tenants this year, and we did not notice any items this year. And I know we had discussed with the commissioners last week, I don't want to say this. You have most likely been aided in your inspections in the past year by the COVID waivers that were available to you. And that was, of course, taken into account when we looked at the inspection testings. So with the waivers, you were given flexibility in when to do the inspections and given extra time to get those done. So when we looked at the inspections and the timing of when they were done, everything was done either within 1 year or within the allowable time frame based on the COVID waiver. Any questions on this? Nope. Okay, so the next steps, of course, we are here now presenting to you so that you can approve the audit. The next steps after that will be the Federal Audit Clearinghouse submission, which is required within 30 days. And then we will also do the audited REAC submission to HUD. That is currently awaiting HUD's approval of the unaudited submission, however. So we need to wait until that's approved. Anything else that we can share with you today?
No.
I would just like
I'm-
to congratulate the staff who work on issuing the vouchers and the improvements that they have made. I know there's been a lot of training, a lot of additional supervisory time, and a lot of work on getting staffed appropriately to make sure that those single audits came out whistle clean as they did this year. And I think they deserve everyone's congratulations for the work that went into that.
Yes, I agree. It's evident in the files.
I want to thank the firm for the work and the cooperation with the staff, and acknowledge to the staff the fact that having no findings during this period of COVID is an added plus. I mean, you guys do really good work for a very complex program, but it was even more difficult this year because of the remote working, COVID, and all of the things that you had to deal with. So I'm always pleased. And first thing I did, of course, as I mentioned when we were talking with the auditors, I go to the letter to find out whether there are any findings or not. And once I see there are none, then I breathe easier. But then I go through the whole report. And I think that you guys have really done well. And we, on behalf of commissioners, I want to say thank you. And that having been said, I'd like to move for acceptance of the audit report.
I second
Second.
that.
It has been probably moved and second to accept the audit report. Are there any questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed is nay. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you all very much for the outstanding work that was done during this period of time, and also too, as as has been done by Commissioner Nelson, to acknowledge the good work that was also done by the staff in order to provide the documentation and schedules important to be able to do an audit in a timely and routine manner. So thank you all very much.
Yes. Thank you, and
Thank you
thank
so
you for your assistance and the assistance of the commission staff.
Thank you.
We will now go back to our regular agenda, and we will start first with committee reports. The first committee report being for Budget, Finance, and Audit is chaired by Commissioner Nelson.
And the first item on our agenda is the approval of the calendar year 2022 portfolio budgets. And for that, I'll turn the meeting over to Cornelia.
Thank you again, Commissioner Nelson, and good afternoon, everyone. The first item is the approval of the calendar year 2022 portfolio budgets. And Tomi Adebo, our Assistant Budget Officer, is going to go ahead and walk us through this.
Could you increase the size of that, please?
More. A little bit more.
Got some older eyes on the call here.
Yeah. Welcome, Commissioner Markowitz.
Thank you, and I apologize for my delay.
Tomi, are you ready?
Yes, I am.
Oh, okay,
Thank you,
great.
Cornelia. Good afternoon, commissioners. The calendar 22 portfolio budget includes 16 calendar year tax credit properties and the Lindley. The calendar 22 budget projects $156,272 in partnership management fees that will be paid to the agency for calendar 22. The budget assumes a rent increase of 1.4% in accordance with the county executive's voluntary rent guideline. Increases at Arcola Towers, Bower Park, Forest Oak Towers, Shady Grove, Georgian Court, Waverly House, and Waverly House are projected at or below 2.5% based on OCAF. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have at this time.
If there are no questions, I would move approval of resolution 21-102, approval of the calendar year 2022 budget.
Commissioner Byrd, I second.
It has been properly moved and seconded to approve resolution 21-102. Are there any questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed is nay. Approved unanimously.
The the next item is the county FY23 mark and the authorization to submit to the county our action on that. And again, I'll go to Cornelia.
Thank you again, Commissioner Nelson. And Tomi Adebo again will be presenting this item for your approval.
Thank you again, Cornelia. Staff has been informed that the submission deadline for the FY23 mark to the County Office of Management and Budget is October 29th, 2021. Staff has requested and received an extension to November 4th of 2021. The agency will be required to submit a mark for FY23 in the amount not to exceed $6,895,693. The mark is based on the FY22 approved mark and does not include the estimate for projected FY23 compensation, health and retirement benefits, and rental license fees. The Budget, Finance, and Audit Committee reviewed this request at its meeting on October 12th of 2021 and joined staff's recommendation that the commission authorize staff to submit the county FY23 mark. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have at this time.
May I just make a comment or for information, the commissioner's information? The Commission for People with Disabilities, in their budget submission and priorities, provides for a housing locator for people with disabilities. It was a position that to assist people who have a disability to find appropriate housing for their needs, either because of a change in their physical condition or another reason that they need to relocate. This position evidently was under the Housing First model at HOC at one time, but it ended up only being a 6-month position, evidently. And they are arguing that people are always having to relocate, and many people with disabilities have a difficult time in finding accessible properties. And so they are requesting the county executive create a position, including benefits, that would cost an estimated $100,000 a year. Now, I'm surprised to find this in their priorities, and I don't know whether we have been aware of these efforts on their behalf, but I question where this position should be located, and wonder if we have had any communication with them as they pursue this funding.
I am not aware of any conversations that's
Yeah.
been had, but I would defer to Cornelia.
To the best of my knowledge, we have not, but I would, Karine or either
Yeah.
Fred, I'm not sure if we
I
have.
have not, but I can certainly speak with Fred and reach out to get more information on this, but we've not had any direct communication on the topic.
Well, I just received their annual report, and in reading it, saw it and thought that there ought to be a conversation about how we can be supportive of this, and if we can work collaboratively, or how we might move forward
Okay.
to help them.
But that would be part of the whole budget process for FY23, and it wouldn't change the mark that came to us from the county.
Correct.
Okay,
Okay, because the mark is the mark. I mean, that you don't have leeway in there. So I think that whether they can provide funding for it and where they provide it is something that has to be worked out and discussed among all the parties who might be involved in that discussion.
Right.
well, my point in raising it is I think that there should be that
Okay.
discussion so
Yep.
that we can be supportive of the position if
Okay.
that's appropriate.
Okay,
Commissioner Simon, this is Terry Fowler, for the record, the budget officer. We have at times had housing locators that are funded by the county and are actually HOC employees. They would be funded under a separate contract from this contract that we are discussing at this time. So
Okay.
as those discussions go forward, if it were to result in funding of a counselor that would be employed by HOC, it would be under a separate contract.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
You're
and
welcome.
if I'm not mistaken, they also had 2 housing locators at HHS.
And we had 2 here at one point.
Yeah, right.
Now we have 1.
Right, okay, but we'll follow up on it.
Yep.
Are there
Thank you.
any other questions?
If there are no other questions, I would move approval of resolution 21-103, the authorization to submit the county mark.
Commissioner Byrd, I
Second.
second.
It's been properly moved and seconded to approve the resolution 21-103 related to the 2023 county operating budget. Are there any other questions? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Approved unanimously.
The next item on the agenda is the Stewart Town Homes calendar year 2021 budget amendment. And I will turn this over again to Cornelia to start off the discussion.
Thank
Or
you
the
again,
handoff.
Commissioner Nelson. Yeah, it's a handoff. And Tommy again will be presenting this last item for your approval.
Thank you, Cornelia. On June 30th, 2021, the agency refinanced Stewarttown Home using low-income housing tax credit equity. The budget amendment establishes both an operating and a capital budget for the period of July 1st, 2021 through December 31st of 2021. The Budget, Finance, and Audit Committee reviewed this request at its meeting on October 12th of 2021 and joined staff's recommendation that the Commission approve the calendar 21 budget amendment for Stewarttown Homes. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer it at this time.
If there are no questions, I would move approval of Resolution 21-104.
I second it.
It has been properly moved and seconded to approve Resolution 21-104. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposers, nay. Approved unanimously. We will now go on to report from the Development and Finance Committee. This is chaired by Commissioner Simon.
The first Development and Finance agenda item is Garnick Apartments and approval of a pre-development budget and funding of pre-development expenditures for Garnkirk. A mixed income rental housing in Clarksburg. Zachary, Karine, I'm not sure who's taking the lead on this.
Marcus.
Marcus?
Marcus.
Good evening, commissioners. For the record, Mark Servin, Director of Real Estate for Housing Opportunities Commission. Here to present approval of a pre-development budget and funding of pre-development expenditures for Garnkirk Apartments in Clarksburg. Can we go 2 slides down, please? Thank you. Staff originally introduced Garnkirk Apartments, which consist of 184 units via unsolicited opportunity back in February of 2021, which was in the form of a letter of intent received on December 4th, subsequently approved on March 3rd of 2021. Commission formally closed on the 99-year ground lease with the Duffy Company's owner of that land on September 17th, 2021. The development will consist of 57 affordable units, a mix of MPDU and workforce housing units. Staff is here today to present pre-development budget and funding in the amount of $5,344,731 to be paid from the PNC Bank real estate line of credit, which would be repaid at the construction loan closing financing in approximately May of 2023. As the design and development progresses, staff plans to return at a future date for approval of a finance plan, which may include low-income housing tax credits, equity and debt, potential use of the Housing Production Fund as a temporary construction bridge financing, given the number of proposed affordable units. Next slide, please. As mentioned, Garnkirk Farms is part of a larger 392 residential dwelling community. This proposed development, once again, is going to include a mix of market rate and affordable units, 19 MPDUs, and 38 restricted units at 50% of AMI. The MPDU units would target households earning up to 65% of AMI. This would be what we call a Texas donut style building with the multifamily wrapping a structured parking garage. And the image to the right, based on the conceptual drawings that we do have, there's a fair amount of community space, a swimming pool, various recreational amenities, passive amenities throughout the building, similar to our prior projects. The project is fully entitled with an approved site plan, stormwater management concept, and we do have precedents for the amenities that we'll show later on. If we can go to number 72, 2 slides down. 3 main principles in this development that'll be a consistent theme and other pipeline efforts. From an architectural standpoint, The apartments will look to complement the classic and current architecture in the Clarksburg community. One of the communities just on the opposite side of 270 Axiom at Cabin Branch, which has the aesthetic that we're seeking. From a sustainability standpoint, the project is being designed to meet LEED Platinum and Energy Star indoor air quality certifications. It's also conceived that the project could be fully electric with net zero energy. There is some ongoing modeling going on, so we'll continue to refine the sustainability aspects of the development. Last and also most important, accessibility and universal design. We are exploring ways from lessons learned at Hillendale Gateway to incorporate more universal design features within the building and throughout the site. This would help allow for aging in place for residents and a variety of convenience features throughout the development. So we will return with the final development plan on what those universal design features would include. Next slide, please. The next, I'd say 3 slides essentially speak to how this development marries with Thrive Montgomery 2050. For this particular development, the goals that would be achieved by this community would include compact form of development and urbanism, stop planning for cars, attaining housing for all income levels within a diverse county, and then also sustainability goals of eradicating greenhouse gas emissions. If we proceed 2 slides down, we'll see that, yep, 75. In terms of racial equity and inclusion, this property does achieve that, whereas in Clarksburg, from a racial perspective, is highly unrepresented throughout the county with a lack of rental housing as a core contributor. So this particular development would deliver much needed rental housing and increase access to Clarksburg for households unable to obtain, homeownership and rental opportunities. Next slide, please. Won't go through the full gamut of this, but the next, I'd say 2 to 3 slides are able to illustrate the unit types that we would be offering, a mix of 1s and 2s, traditional layouts with open floor plans, side-by-side washer and dryers included. We do have a turning radius shown there to give an idea of bedroom sizes and also just the general unit layouts, some of which do contain balconies and are appropriately sized. Next 2 slides, please. Yes. Featured amenities, not the full list, but we've provided here the variety of in-unit amenities as well as community-wide amenities that would be incorporated into this development. This would be all electric, so we will investigate inclusion of potential induction stoves. We'd have vinyl and composite flooring, controlled access, and the community-wide amenities, car charging stations, study lounges, picnic areas, essentially a fully amenitized development. Next slide, please. The pre-development budget, once again, is approximately $5.3 million. As we mentioned, largely the entitlement was done by the Duffy family, so the fees here represent all the fees to get us to the point of completing construction documents, various legal fees, permitting fees to advance the development efforts, also payment of the ground lease up until the point where we're able to close on the project, and then also a soft cost contingency. So with this budget, we're seeking to minimize the amount of times that we would return to the commission for any future funding for the development. Next slide, please. Or I'm sorry, next slide after. Sorry, 81. Two slides down, 81. Yes, right there. Development timeline, 3 buckets. The key milestones in 2021 included executing the ground lease, here today to establish a pre-development budget and funding. And now through year end and through spring of next year would be ongoing building design, building permit submissions, and then also future commission actions, which will place on your radar now for procuring the general contractor, final development plan, and finance plan. Fast forwarding to 2023 through 24 would be more design for the precast garage building permit approval, and then also construction start somewhere around May 23, which with a 16-month schedule would take us to about August of 24. Last slide, please. And with that, issues for consideration. Does the commission wish to accept staff's recommendation, which is supported by the Development and Finance Committee, to authorize a pre-development budget amount of $5,344,731 to account for the costs necessary to complete the pre-development entitlement phases of the development through construction financing and closing, a draw on the PNC Bank real estate line of credit to fund the pre-development budget, which would be repaid from the proceeds of construction financing, and that interest payments for all draws on the relock to be made from the general fund and reimbursed at the closing of the construction financing. I'll take any questions you may have at this time.
One question, Marcus, on the financial stack, you indicated the fact that the ground lease was being paid for as part of pre-development costs, and that goes through January of 23. Does that January 23 mean that's the end date for the ground lease, and then you've got an additional cost from January through the rest of the remaining period of the construction? And then what happens after that period of time? How are you going to finance the remaining part of the ground lease?
Yeah, so that would take us up to the point that the ground lease payments would start. So they begin at the earlier of January of 23. So we've allotted the payments that would occur during the pre-development phase. And then when the project starts, this will be an above the line expense. So when we do our construction budget up until the point where we have heads and beds where the project is occupied, we would include in our construction budget payments for additional ground lease payments during that period.
Okay.
I-
Any other questions? Can I get a motion to approve and then we'll take questions?
On behalf of the committee, I would like to move approval of Resolution 21-105A, approving the funding, the pre-development budget. And I'd also like to compliment the staff for anticipating Thrive 2050. Though the Fed committee's made it very clear it is not a precise direction or adopted yet, it shows that we are moving forward in anticipation of the elements of the Thrive plan. And so I'm delighted to see that. And this carries the full recommendation of the committee.
We have a second for approval of Resolution 21-105A.
I second.
Second.
It's been probably moved and seconded to approve Resolution 21-105A.
Marcus, yeah, I have a question. I'm sorry, I think I missed this. Would you explain that on that page 82, the budget fiscal impact? I'm not sure what that is saying. Go back to slide, right there, yeah.
So essentially, as we have here is on one of the prior slides, we have the table that had a projection out to FY23 for the OHRF. So we did make a correction in this slide where we didn't show the future years as the balances may change. But the current balance that we have is about 74.1 million. And the development is slated to close on the financing, which would have a projected balance at that time around 73.9. So going back to just the interest payments, what we're saying here is that the outstanding interest of approximately 80,000 from the relock for the pre-development expense will be paid from that general fund.
Okay, so that this is just showing us the balance of the relock. You're not anticipating using $74 million.
Correct. No, no.
I mean,
No.
the word, I was just confused by the word.
Okay.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify.
No, not at all.
I mean, we're going to have another way to permanently finance it.
Correct.
Okay,
They were merely trying to anticipate your question in this way it was written.
I understand that.
So, any other questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. So ordered unanimously. One other motion is 21-105B.
I would move adoption of resolution 21-105B,
Second,
authorizing this to draw up to $5,344,731 on the PNC Bank real estate
Second.
line of credit.
I second it.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed is nay. Approved unanimously. Next item.
The next item is authorization for the acting executive director to negotiate and execute a purchase and sale agreement for the disposition of 4527 Avondale to the National Center for Children and Families, and authorization to complete the sale.
Commissioner, have you jumped down to
I have
21-106?
indeed. I apologize.
21-106,
Shady Grove, you're looking at.
West Side Shady Grove.
I have mislaid that. I apologize.
Would you like me to
Yes.
cover it?
If you please.
I would move that we approve motion 21-106 for approval of a subordination loan from the Housing Production Fund to HOC at Westside Shady Grove Limited Liability Company.
Second,
It's been moved and
Thank you,
seconded.
Fran.
Was there going to be some discussion about that from the staff?
I certainly can. It sounds as though you're making a motion, but I'm more than happy to provide some background if you would like, Commissioner Priest.
Could you please do that?
Absolutely. For the record, my name is Tim Getzinger. I'm the Chief Development Funds Officer for HOC. And I'll be taking you through this next agenda item, which again is the approval of a subordinate loan from the newly created Housing Production Fund to the Westside Shady Grove development. Just as a background on the current page that we're on December 9th, 2020, two separate actions were taken. One was the approval of a final financing plan, and the other was the approval of the final development plan for the Westside Shady Grove development. In it, it approved the budget, as well as a subordinate loan in the amount up to $15 million from the county's Housing Initiative Fund for a short-term construction loan, which was intended to be refinanced at permanent closing. Actually, it was intended to be refinanced when we closed the Housing Production Fund. And so on May 5th, 2021, the Commission approved the Revolving Housing Production Fund, and we were able to go out and execute the issuance of bonds, and the HPF is active. It is a $50 million revolving fund. This action, as per page 87, if you go to the next page, this would be the first loan provided by the Housing Production Fund. Just as a little bit of background, again, it's $50 million. It's short term. It's for the construction period, intended to be refinanced at the permanent close. It carries with it a 5% interest rate. The interest would then be actually used to pay down on the debt service payments made by the county. Once all $50 million is issued, the total payment by the county per year will actually be less than $600,000 for this $50 million revolving fund, which is just, it's amazing. I think the original estimates were in the $2.5 million range. And in order to be able to raise $50 million at a cost to the county at 600,000, I think it speaks to really the importance of and what a great new tool that we have here. And so the first project that we are looking to make a loan with these funds would be the West Side Shady Grove project. If you slide down to the next page. It was represented in the May 5th, 2021 meeting that two potential developments would be the first to be using these funds. Again, West Side Shady Grove, 14.3 million, which would repay the county's HIF loan. The West Side Shady Grove is a 268 unit mixed use, mixed income development, and it perfectly fits the requirements of the revolving program in that the deals have to be 70-30. So 70% of the units are market, 30% are affordable. Of the 30% affordable, 20% are at 50% AMI, 10% are at MPDU. We all know that one of the county's big priorities is hitting that very low income AMI, the 50%, and that is what we are able to do with the West Side Shady Grove project. If we could slide down to the next page. This just provides you with a little bit more information on the proposed structure of the loan. Again, 14.3 million, 5% would be the interest rate. The maximum term would be 5 years. However, it is expected that we will reach permanent financing for the West Side Shady Grove in February 2024. So it's going to be much shorter than that. And as soon as we hit permanent, the entire 14.3 will be repaid and it will be available to be loaned out to the next eligible deal. One thing that I do want to point out, and it's in the next chart, the sources of financing, is that during those actions that were approved, I believe it was December 9th, I may be misspeaking, but those actions of the final development plan and the final financing plan, 119 million was approved. Because of how things ended up closing, we actually received more in senior debt, and the total project cost was 121 million. So this will require us taking a new action to revise that final financing plan. It doesn't change what we're bringing to you today, but it will require an adjustment to the budget. So I do want to point that out, that you will be seeing, I would assume in the next meeting, a motion to revise it to what the current budget is. How about that?
Thank you for your.
And next page is just the resolutions that we have. Final page would be the action. Are there any questions?
It shows you the action, the motion's been made and seconded, just shows you the significant response from the committee, having gotten the presentation made during the committee meeting to be willing to recommend this forward to the full commission. So we've got a motion and a second to approve resolution 21-106. Are there any questions? I don't have a question, but I would make a comment that it really is impressive and it certainly is important in terms of the Housing Production Fund, that we've got projects already queued up and ready to go, and that also have a repayment cycle that will allow the use of those funds again within the 4 to 5 year period of time has really gone by. We will have those monies back into our coffers and able to reuse them for other projects. So I just want to commit some accolade to the staff for being aggressive. I know when you first presented the Housing Production Fund, we knew we had projects that were eligible for it. And so it's good to see we were able to move expeditiously to use the first tranche of these dollars.
It is indeed.
Are there any questions? All in favor of the motion to approve resolution 21-106, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposers, nay. So ordered unanimously.
Our next item is Westwood Tower, approval of an emergency procurement purchase pursuant to section 5.62 of HOC's procurement policy for the continuation of litigation services. And I apologize for needing the assistance. This was a big packet, and our switch in the agenda had me have everything out of order.
Not a problem.
I would look to Asha, I believe, for this item.
I am actually presenting.
Oh, all right, Zach.
Just
Thank
to
you.
keep everybody guessing. So staff is seeking approval of an emergency procurement pursuant to HOC's procurement policy for the continuation of litigation services. In 2019, December 2019, staff solicited quotes pursuant to the policy in preparation for any potential litigation regarding Westwood Tower. On the 8th of January in 2020, HSC entered into an agreement for services with Douglas and Boykin PLLC. That firm submitted the lowest price as part of that procurement. And the agreement included HSC's ability to request that Douglas represent HSC in the event any litigation was filed. As we know, such litigation was filed on the 10th of August in 2021, where HSC was named as a defendant in a complaint. And with the litigation still ongoing, staff anticipates needing additional litigation services beyond the small purchase procedure limit, which is what we were operating under as part of that bidding process, that procurement process prior to this stage. That limit is $150,000, and given the potential legal and financial ramifications of the litigation, in order to maintain continuity in our litigation strategy, staff is seeking Commission's approval of an emergency procurement for the continuation of these litigation services being provided by Douglas pursuant to HSC's procurement policy for such situations. And this request was discussed with the Development and Finance Committee on the 22nd of October 2021, during which staff amended its proposal that Westwood Tower's existing property cash was in fact sufficient, so that will be the source rather than repurposed OHRF monies to fund any future legal costs and fees associated with the continuation of litigation services provided by Douglas in this matter. So the request of the Commission, does the Commission accept the staff's recommendation, which is supported by the Development and Finance Committee, to approve emergency procurement for the continuation of litigation services provided by Douglas and Boykin PLLC pursuant to section 5.6 of HSC's procurement policy? And does the Commission approve the use of Westwood Tower's existing property cash funds property cash to fund the continuation of legal litigation services in an amount not to exceed $270,000? If you have any questions, I'm happy to try to address them.
Can we get a motion and
I would
seconded?
I would move on behalf of the committee, resolution 21107, Westwood Tower litigation.
I
One
would,
second.
I would second. I also ask a question. This is an amount not to exceed, which means if it's not necessarily committing to any particular course of action related to ongoing litigation. Is that correct?
That's correct.
That is correct.
It has been properly moved and seconded. Are there any other questions beyond that, Commissioner Nelson?
Nope.
If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Resolution 21107 is approved unanimously. Next item.
The next item is for the sale of 4527 Avondale Street. Kareem, who's going
Zach-
to take us through this?
Zachary will walk you through this item. Please go ahead.
Thank you. For the record, Zachary Marks, Chief Real Estate Officer. For this item, this is the culmination of the work that the Commission's been doing on 4527 Avondale. We are seeking an authorization for the Acting Executive Director to negotiate and execute a purchase and sale agreement for the disposition of 4527 Avondale Street to the National Center for Children and Families, and authorization to complete the sale as well. So the executive summary can be found on page 101 of your brief book. However, to provide an even finer summary, HOC originally acquired 4527 as part of a 25-unit acquisition back in 2015. It was we did so under right of first refusal, the right of first refusal, in order to preserve these units. They were going to be sold to a private for sale buyer. The units, as they are now, rent at approximately MPDU levels. They are unrestricted, but certainly qualify as naturally occurring affordable housing. HSC financed the acquisition using proceeds drawn on its real estate line of credit. The other three properties, there were 4 properties in this 25-unit acquisition. The other 3 sit on the south side. 4527 is actually on the northern side of Avondale Street. And on the 6th of October 2021, the Commission authorized the Acting Executive Director to enter into a non-binding letter of intent with the National Centers for Children and Families for the purchase and sale of 4527 for a purchase price of $1,225,000. We did not require an earnest money deposit because this acquisition was being fully supported by monies from DHCA. The other core term was that the closing date occur on or before the date in which NCCF close and or DHCA closes on 4531, which, as you know from previous meetings, is the subject of the county's exercising its right of first refusal on 4531, which was the contract for which was received essentially at the same time as 4527. As it relates to valuation, because 4531 and 4527 are nearly identical, they sit next to each other. They're both four units of two bedroom units. The rents are nearly equal. It's the same building, so on and so forth. Staff felt comfortable taking the concurrent sale price of that property, which was done in the open market, and ultimately the county triggered its right of first refusal, and so staff took the 1225 of 4531 as such a strong comp that it did not necessitate an appraisal. In addition, this is a disposition rather than an acquisition, so we were comfortable in making that recommendation. Page 103 of your packet provides background on the proposed transaction. The National Centers for Children and Families is a Bethesda-based nonprofit dedicated to providing housing to low-income families, many of whom would otherwise be at risk of homelessness. As we've discussed in the past, NCCF owns 2 other similar buildings on this street, 4519 and 23, which are 23 is adjacent to 27, 19 adjacent to 23, 31 adjacent to 27. So this gives them 4 in a row to really expand their mission and service on this street. And NCCF utilizes the properties for the purpose of providing housing to households with income at or below 50% of the area median income. NCCF is in discussions with Montgomery County's Department of Housing and Community Affairs regarding DHCA's contract to purchase 4531. DHCA is in fact triggered on 4531, so they are executing on the same. They're executing on a timeline to close by the end of the year. NCCF's acquisition of 4531 and 27 would not only expand their capacity here on this street, but they actually are viewing as an opportunity to potentially add to the spectrum of services they provide here. Given that the sale of 4527 is subject to the ROFR statute, staff is recommending commission approval to negotiate and execute a PSA shortly after tonight so that there is sufficient time to close on or before the end of the year so that both properties can be acquired at the same time. Page 107 of your packet provides the summary and recommendations for this item. Number one, does the commission wish to join staff's recommendation, which is supported by the Development and Finance Committee, to authorize the acting executive director to negotiate and execute a PSA for the disposition of 4527 Avondale pursuant to HOC's non-binding letter of intent with NCCF that was also commission approved? Number two, does the commission wish to authorize the completion of the sale of 4527 Avondale to NCCF? And does it authorize that proceeds from this sale be used to pay down the RELOC, the real estate line of credit, which was used to originally acquire this property? We anticipate minimal closing costs, and so we expect something close to 1.21 million in net proceeds to be applied against the RELOC. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
If there are no questions, I would move approval of Resolution 21-108 to proceed with the sale at the amount of the recommended 1,225,000, I believe.
Second.
Been probably moved and second to approve resolution 21-108. Are there any questions? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The resolution is approved unanimously. Next item.
Next item is the information on our new anticipated headquarters on 2nd and Fenwick in Silver Spring, and the adoption or approval of design and budget update.
Yes, Commissioners, for the record, once again, Marcus Irvin, Director of Real Estate. Here to provide a design and budget update. There's also no action for this. We're providing a design update. And just as a reminder, if anything comes to mind as we're going through the slides, we'll be having another more in-depth design discussion tomorrow with the full team. So for those not present at the Development and Finance Committee, we'll provide just an overview of the slides. Let's go to 2 slides down, please. So essentially back in April 3rd, 2019, HSC authorized the executive director to execute a development agreement and ground lease with ProMark for the joint development of the property. We engaged Design Collective, who's the architect for the project, and also will administer the construction administration for the project. May of 2020, we approved pursuing site development approval under the mandatory referral with the county. On August 7th of 2020, the first application of the 2-step process was submitted. And on November 12th, it was unanimously approved. Currently, as mentioned, the design team has completed the design development documents and is poised to begin construction documents with the goal of finalizing permitting and starting construction sometime in June of 2022. Next slide, please. Just for site context, located in downtown Silver Spring, across the street from the SCRAC and Elizabeth House development. The aerial to the right gives a little bit more context in relation to the nearby sites, including the Cameron Street garage. Circulation, essentially vehicles would come off of Fenwick Lane and go around in a clockwise fashion. I can't point on the screen, but we will be able to show this a little bit more in an interactive nature tomorrow. But coming out of that delivery part from Fenwick, there'd be a right turn only onto 2nd Avenue to control traffic as well as pickup and drop off. Next slide, please. This slide here, once again, for context, just shows the site in relation to public transportation. So we've got 3 nodes there denoting where bus stops are located in relation to the project for Ride-On and Metro, providing service throughout the county. So it's very much transit oriented. Next slide. 2 what we'll call hero exterior shots, showing the corner at Fenwick and 2nd, and the shot below showing a picture of the lobby as you're entering up to go upstairs to where the hearing room would be. On that base level right now, we are showing the lobby areas open. We have discussed with the team a variety of options to account for any kind of heating and cooling, as well as shading devices. So we'll be able to discuss that in more detail tomorrow. But there are a variety of ways to accomplish that. Facing 2nd Avenue, the building massing is just cut back from the facade and from the corner to enhance compatibility and create a focal point for the building entry, as you see in the image above. Also facing Fenwick Lane above the 3rd level, the upper floors are set back to provide a more limited street wall and established scale at the pedestrian level. Also, as we work our way into the interior, there's also a lit stairwell to promote alternative means to getting up and down through and navigating throughout the floors outside of the elevators. Next slide. The next 2 slides, actually provide just a little bit on the exterior design, which includes a variety of materials, including clear glass, metal panel and mullions, terracotta tile, and that red and white that you see, granite stone, and also decorative CMU. Be able to show a little bit more close in view, but this just gives you an idea of the palette. Next slide. This is just from another entrance, once again, just showing that combined terracotta, also gray metal frames, and then also the mixture of stone at the street level. Next slide. Up here off of the 7th floor just shows this accessible area for staff and such, where the green roof is located. Once again, just showing a little bit more of the exterior building materials. And then up at the upper level, the 9th level, more sort of community space for staffing as the penthouse level. Let's go 2 slides down, please. This building stacking diagram just represents all of the various staff and offices that would be accommodated in the building. The first 2 levels represent sort of HRD space, public space, loading and bike storage, our main lobbies. The 2nd floor would be where the hearing room, pre-function space, and also what we'll call the commissioner suite, which has a variety of spaces for commission members to prepare in advance of meetings, take private phone calls, and then also where the commission meetings would be held in the evenings. The remaining floors represent all of the other various offices, approximately designed for about 250 staff persons. And you'll see in the detail there the private offices and workstations, which is a floor plan that's sort of replicated throughout. 9th floor represents employee lounge and kitchenette areas. Next slide, please. Once again, this is showing the experience of entering into the lobby with the HRD space to the right within the image on the left. The other image to the right shows the design intent, for the lobby wall. This would be a proposed like metal framework, could be of the county or of the area, but is an abstract lobby wall centerpiece. And once again, this is the concept design intent. Next slide. This would be entering into the HRD space off of the lobby. Once again, we would have an attendant at the front desk within HRD, and then also within entering the main lobby space. You'll notice that the counter there has a lower height for a person that maybe in a wheelchair to be accessible if they have to fill out any documentation. Slides 123 and 124, we'll get into a little bit more of the primary floor plans. This floor plan here shows the accessible route of a person entering into the building off of 2nd and Fenwick. So we've shown here where the potential drop off would be, just where that rectangular box is to the left of the main entrance. There would be a double entry door with an automatic opener. Once you come in, you go straight to the reception area. As those two sort of pathways branch off, you would either go to HRD, the service center, which has a collection of meeting rooms, and then also smaller huddle spaces. Otherwise, if you're going up to the 2nd floor and you're not taking the stairs, there's a bank of elevators, 3 of those where you see it says elevator lobby. That area behind there is not accessible to the public. It would be keyed. And that's really all the back of house, only accessible to HOC staff members. Next slide. Once again, just a little bit zoomed in of the lobby, showing the staircase and a portion of the elevator banks towards the right of the image. Next slide, please. The next 3 slides are going to show just a rendering of the hearing room. We have expressed the design team about designing a curved dais so that commissioners are able to see one another during the exchange. So while this is the current image, we have conveyed to the team about delivering on that. This would be a flexible space, so tables and chairs could be moved around to accommodate the meetings that would be occurring. You'll see a lot of natural materials with the wood being carried throughout this space, which you also see in the lobby. There also would be technology hookups at those desks, and then also within the floors for anyone that has a laptop. Next slide, please. Just taking into, so this slide here is of the 2nd floor. Once again, this circulation path is showing someone coming off of the stairs or from the elevator lobby. We have a pre-function space just outside of the hearing room. Also within the hearing room, there would be a ramp for anyone needing access to where the commissioners would be seated. Once again, that desk, we're exploring how to do a curved dais there. Also back in here, not shown, but is part of the design. Really to the right is the commission suite. So there's separate conference rooms, huddle spaces, and areas to take phone calls, as well as a kitchenette. So we're calling this area, while it's not shown here, and it may be shown on the next slide, the commissioner suite, which is would be accessible only by key fob. Next slide. Once again, just another zoomed in view of the hearing room, pre-function space, and elevator lobby banks. Slide 128, the next slide, just kind of breaks down the sustainability efforts. So as you've heard before, building will be highly energy efficient, occupant-centered comfort design with individual controls via VRF system, daylighting design and multi-level control. Health and wellness is also important with natural material palettes, encouraging the use of stairs by music and lighting, access to daylight, and also the low carbon impact, designing for flexibility, centralized support spaces, and then specify low embodied carbon materials. The project as planned is planned to attain a LEED certification level of silver or higher. Slides 129 and 130 provide a breakdown of both the current hard and soft costs. I'll caveat this that we will come to the commission at a future date for selection of a general contractor. So we will be releasing an RFP to refine these costs, uncover any value engineering savings in this budget. But this is currently the budget as we have it right now, just with what's been specified. So these numbers are subject to change. If we go to slide 131. Once again, you've seen this timeline, just the buckets of where the project has come from and where we are today. You'll see in 2021 was a lot of the entitlement efforts. We also have the continuation of the design, third-party CM, which would help in the pricing of the project. Taking us into 2022 would be the commission action to select the general contractor. Also leading into potentially spring and summer would be the final development plan and final finance plan for the project. And May through June would be record plat, building permits, and then also the construction start. And with a potential construction start of June of 22, potential completion and occupancy in May of 2024. So lots of development activity between our tax credit resyndication closings, activities in going into 22 and beyond. Last slide, please. Just for reference, prior resolutions, and as we discussed in the prior slide, just future commission approvals, which we've discussed would be selection of a third-party CM to aid in pricing efforts and administration, general contractor, various financing plans and development approvals, and then other commission approvals as needed. Once again, we look forward to design presentation tomorrow for a more interactive and robust discussion. So I'll take any questions if you have it.
Thank you for this overview. That's very helpful. We
Thank you.
all look forward to this, and may we all live so long to enjoy it. That's
Yeah.
wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation. And, you know, the location of the Second and Fenwick is a great location across the street from one of our major redevelopments we're doing with Elizabeth Square. And so we got both our current housing, and for many of those who haven't reached my level, it may be for looking at their future housing across the street. So again, thank you. Any questions? Just a presentation by the staff. Nothing for us to approve formally. Any other questions? If not, I want to thank the staff very much for this presentation.
Yep.
And we have, by virtue of having moved the audit report to the beginning of our meeting, we are now formally through the order of business for this meeting. And pursuant to section 3-305B and D of the General Provisions article of the Annotated Code of Maryland, I move to adopt the written closing statement dated November the 3rd, 2021, and to adjourn this open session to a closed session to discuss two topics. The first topic is potential acquisition of two multifamily properties located in Bethesda and Listonville. This discussion may occur in a closed session in order to protect HOC's ability to effectively negotiate and to preserve its ability to purchase the properties. The statutory section that allows this meeting to be closed is section 3-305B3. The second topic is a discussion of ongoing litigation that has been filed against HOC. This topic must be discussed in closed session in order to protect HOC's attorney-client privilege. Section 4-301A1 of the Maryland Public Information Act prevents disclosure of information if, by law, the information is privileged. The statutory section that allows this topic to be discussed in closed session are sections 3-305B7 and 3-305B8 and section 3-305B13. If any member of the public wishes to object to the closed meeting, please comment in the YouTube chat box or contact HOC's general counsel. Instructions can be found in the State of Emergency Open Meeting Procedures, which is posted on HOC's website. Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded to close this meeting. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, nay. The motion is carried unanimously. Thank you all very much, and thank all of you all who have participated by streaming on YouTube. Thank you all very much.